Hey, welcome to the third and final video with prophetic markers and celestial signs and the high watch of April 10 to 13. So April 12th is the first fruits of barley, the bridal portion, and that is the offering on the Essene calendar. And we have learned how the Essenes are a type of wilderness bride. So it is really interesting that April 12th is their marker for the offering of first fruits. And in the linked article from the website from Ken Johnson, he explains how they formulate their calendar and why their first fruits portion is placed on this date. So April 12th is also a potential sign of sudden destruction and war at the gates, because Mars, which is the reflection of the Roman god of war, is at the southern tip of the Pentagon core-shaped stars of Auriga. Auriga, the constellation of the Shepherd and Charioteer, and is associated with the safeguarding of the kid goats. And that equals the tip of the northern horn of Taurus, taking place in the celestial silver gate. So this is a lot of information, but it will drop into place when we see the visuals. So this celestial location of Auriga and its pentagon-shaped main stars, that is important because the global elite mimicked this location with the piercing or destruction of the Pentagon. So the Pentagon was the reflection of Auriga in the heavens, pierced by what they deemed to be an airplane. We know differently now. While on the same day, Gemini, the constellation Gemini, which is actually not twin brothers in the Bible, but the bride and the groom, are reflected in the twin towers, but also the DNA twin pillars. So they were being pulled, quote unquote. So the intentional destruction of the twin towers and the piercing of the Pentagon is the earthly reflection of this exact location in the heavens, the celestial silver gate, the constellation Gemini, and the constellation Auriga. And it is possible, as Mars is the brightest planet visible in the evening, that this is also a marking of what the elite have been preparing, namely a second 9/11. And this, of course, is only interpretation and speculation based upon what they did in the past, so pattern analysis. And in like manner, our own shepherd was pierced at the cross, and people's DNA are currently being subject to controlled demolition as well by the elite's mRNA vaccine shots, which is actually gene therapy. 2 days later, Mars arrives at the southern tip of Taurus. That star is named Zeta Tauri, meaning the heavenly gate. So Taurus the bull, the entire constellation, speaks of the Lord coming down to both rescue and judge. The horns also reflect a goalpost, which is passed through by Mars at this time. Mars is the only planet easily visible during evenings nowadays, and it appears that the Lord wants us to take note at what he's pointing out. Over the next 2 weeks, Mars and Aldebaran, the bright red star in the head of the bull, will join the bright red star Betelgeuse in the right shoulder of Orion. And there's been a lot of debate the past years about that star going supernova. So we have a triangle between Mars, the red planet, and these 3 red stars. And another highlight this month, I believe, deserves our attention is the birth of a new star, a nova in Cassiopeia. And Cassiopeia is the Queen's constellation. And after its discovery on March 18th, it is now brightened enough to be visible with binoculars. And it's located near the boundary between Cassiopeia and Cepheus the King, as depicted in the celestial signs overview we're going to look at below. And it is relatively low in the northwestern sky after dusk. But because that part of the sky is circumpolar and never sets, it is going to be visible before dawn as well. And what I found really interesting is that the nova in Cassiopeia was discovered by a Japanese man named Yuji Nakamura. And his name combined means abundant, second, peace, healing, and village in the middle. That must be a coincidence, right? So we see that often the Lord works with not just the name and time of these celestial events, but even the people who discover them. There is underlying meaning in that. So April 13th, we have the expected new moon after 3 days of lunar darkness. So for 3 days, the moon is not visible because of the sun, but it will most likely reappear April 13th, and it will do so at Uranus in the constellation Aries. And Uranus is referring to the heavens, but also to Enoch. And we made that connection prior. It's linked in the article over here. And it's right in the location where Aries the ram cuts the string of Pisces. So we see another liberation sign in the heavens. And because we know from the scriptures that when John is in the throne room, he sees Jesus with hair as white as wool. This may also refer to this setting in the constellation Aries, the white-haired lamb. And on IR1, so the first day of the new moon sighting, it was that day that the Israelites had come out of Egypt that the Lord spoke to Moses in the tent of meeting in the wilderness of Sinai and said, "Take a census of the whole congregation of Israel by their clans and families, listing every man by name, one by one. You and Aaron are to number those who are 20 years of age and older by their divisions, every one who can serve in Israel's army. And one man from each tribe, the head of each family, must be there with you." So just like at the time of the crossing over by Joshua and Caleb, those who were younger than 20 were eligible to enter into the promised land. And we can see in the scripture that 20 is an age limit, a marker for maturity. When people were able to fight in the army, get married, they had to pay temple taxes, so that 20 years is a dividing marker. And IR1 at around 1272 BC, that was the start of the conquest of Jericho under Joshua. And we read about that in the book of Joshua, but also in Joshua 88. And here we can read how that conquest was also a calendar statement. And it involves the sighting of the new moon being the start of the month. And also read over here how Jericho and the encircling foreshadows the pattern of the alteration in time of natural laws. We know from the book of Daniel that our adversary will be given the authority to change time and natural laws. He will be able to manipulate that after the rapture, and most likely that process will be along the lines of the Jericho encircling. And this time is also referred to as the time of perplexity, where people will be completely debased. In addition to all the delusion and all the lies and demonic manifestations, time and natural laws will also be manipulated. You can read more about that over here. April 14th, the moon will enter the constellation Taurus underneath the Pleiades, the 7 churches. And again, Taurus pointing to Jesus coming as rescuer and judge. And that same day, Aries is at solar conjunction, and that is a reference to the golden apple. So let us take a look at the visuals for the celestial signs. So this is the location where the serpentid meteor shower takes place. And here you can see that visualized in the heavens. So this is the triangular base, and the head of serpents is the capstone. You can see that designed over here. This is the corona borealis, the northern crown, and that is the victory crown of believers that the serpent is aspiring to steal from us. And the Lord is highlighting this section, I believe, with a meteor shower. And that is today. So I believe He is cautioning us to not lose our crown. So tomorrow on Tuesday, we will have the conjunction of the Moon and Saturn. And that takes place in the goat section of the constellation Capricorn over here. And the next day, the Moon will have progressed to the fish portion of the constellation Capricorn to then conjunct with Jupiter, the king planet. And on that same day, we can see that both the Sun and Venus will cross the line of the horizontal fish of Pisces. So this is the ecliptic. And if you flip that in your mind's eye to the left, you can see that this is the horizontal or trodden down fish. And Venus and the Sun will cross that asterism line. And this is the Alrisha wedding knot star that will come into play a bit later. On the 9th of April, the Moon will be at perihelion, meaning closest to the Sun. So by that time, the Moon will be out of sight, and it will be surface on April 13th. And Sirius will be closest to the Sun, will be at solar conjunction also on the 7th of April. And that is connected to the little g goddess Eris and the golden apple. On the 11th of April, we can see how Pisces, the V-shaped, how the Sun and Venus are in that V, maybe pointing to victory. Who knows? And will be accompanied on the 12th by the Moon. The Moon at the time is still hidden. Remember that we said that we shared that the Moon will become visible the next day in the constellation Aries. So we see another visual of both Venus and the hidden Moon traversing the upright fish in Pisces. So the fish is freed to swim upward, and that is to the north, and that is the location of Cepheus the king and Cassiopeia the queen. And then on the 12th of April, we can see how Mars is in the constellation Taurus between the horns of the bull, and this is the pentagon-shaped constellation. The main stars of Auriga, the shepherd or charioteer, also tying in with the rapture. Mars is lining up with the southern tip of the pentagon. And this is the red star Betelgeuse of Orion. So we talked about how Mars, Betelgeuse, and Aldebaran are forming a triangular pyramid, a red pyramid at this time. And the 13th is the day when the Moon will most likely become visible. So the new moon of the second month, right next to Uranus, pointing to Enoch in the constellation Aries. And this was the constellation that was visible at the time of Jesus' crucifixion as well. So this is the location of the beautiful nova, the new star in the constellation Cassiopeia. It is situated right over here. And I believe I have another picture, yes, of that location. So the asterism forming the constellation Cassiopeia the queen. So that is the model of the bride who has arrived in the throne room in heaven and who is elevated to the position of being a queen. Next to the constellation Cepheus the king, and right in the middle is that new star, that nova, attracting attention to our future inheritance and position, and discovered by the Japanese man who points to peace and being right in the middle. So I believe this is a beautiful way to close this portion on the celestial signs and prophetic markers. I hope to see you in the comments. Much love.